Okay, so I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Julia Kalloz. I'm sure I pronounced it wrong again. She is a Villanova graduate with a BA in political science. Julia currently works as the Deputy Chief of Energy for the Baltimore City Department of General Services. Previously, Julia worked for the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, managing energy grants and loan programs for low-income residents in single-family and multifamily housing. In addition to her education at Villanova, Julia also holds a master's in public policy from George Washington University. We also have Michael Garland here. He is a Villanova graduate with a BS in civil engineering. Michael currently works as the director from Monroe County Department of Environmental Services. His role includes managing multiple public service divisions, including solid waste, engineering, pure water, and facilities and fleet. In addition to his Villanova education, Michael also holds a master's in civil engineering from the University of Buffalo. I'm really thankful for our alums for sharing their stories and their time with us today. And so without further ado, I'm going to let them take it over. Thank you so much. I'm going to start with Julia.
Thank you.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. It's Julia Kalloz. No problem. It's a hard one to say, which has actually been a little bit of a career lesson sometimes, and having your boss of 7 years when you resign, not pronounce your name correctly and be gracious about it. So I'm going to give a little presentation on what our office does to give you a sense of what we do. So I assume this is showing. Okay, so I work for the Baltimore City Department of General Services in the Division of Capital Projects and Energy. And so there is Baltimore City Hall right there. The Department of General Services in Baltimore City works to support and empower city agencies so that they can provide city services. So we are the support agency for all of, public works, rec and parks, fire, police in some way across the city, including their fleet, facilities, energy, and also some contracts and purchasing. One thing you'll find if you're interested in energy management and local government is we're in all sorts of different agencies. In the city, we're in general services, but sometimes it sits in a more central planning office, sometimes in a mayor's office, and really all over. Sometimes there'll be an environmental protection office, which Baltimore does not have. What do I do at the city? So we're responsible for managing the purchase of affordable energy. That includes participating in wholesale markets for electricity and natural gas purchasing, as well as negotiating with district energy providers. In addition, for purchasing, there's also power purchase agreements. We're responsible for managing energy utility data, reducing costs through energy efficiency projects, and increasing use of renewable energy for the city. I wanted to give a sense of what is the kind of work that we do. This work that I do is very general. There's not one type of background that can bring you to this place. For example, we have, maybe not on staff at the moment, we're a little low staffed, but analysts that are doing some of the building assessments, utility data analysis, doing measurements of projects. We need financial staff who are financing the projects, working on purchasing power, running revolving loan funds for energy projects. Our engineers, of course, I am not an engineer, but I often call myself the translator of engineers. Helps make their projects happen by connecting the right policy and financial pieces for them. I come from more of a policy background, but many of my peers are engineers, architects. That's a little bit of where I have been. So that's in general of what I currently do for the city. How did I get there? So I have been at the city this go round, actually only since November, but I previously worked for the city of Baltimore for 3 years, a few years ago. Before I worked for the city, I worked for the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, running a enhanced weatherization program, energy efficiency for low-income persons. So I ran about $30 million in grant funding for affordable housing, and doing insulation and air sealing and light bulbs for low-income persons. Before that, I worked for 7 years as a consultant doing energy and environmental consulting for federal agencies. I worked for a company called LMI, so I put their logo up there. I worked most of the time for the Postal Service, the Army, the Air Force, NREL, Department of Energy, GSA, doing green building assessments and evaluation, doing greenhouse gas inventories for several agencies, some of them their first ones, doing sustainability reporting for the Army. We did fuel cell evaluations. As a generalist coming out of Villanova, they basically said, you are cheap and good at spreadsheets, so we will just give you what work we need to do. And the blessing of that is that I got to work across a lot of the field very quickly. So I really did enjoy that time. I think the thing I learned is I started picking up little pieces of energy throughout that work, because I started as an environmental analyst, and then they needed somebody to cold call utilities. And I said, well, okay, I'll cold call utilities. And they needed somebody to do fleet fuel evaluations for the Air Force, Defense Logistics Agency. And they just needed me to crunch data. I'm like, I can do that. And as I went on, I kept seeing I was doing more and more energy work. So when I decided to jump to the city of Baltimore, I wanted to dive deep the first time in being in the field, working with buildings and projects directly. Because when I was working for federal agencies, we were at the 30,000 post office level, not at the level of making sure the lights that are on top of City Hall are LEDs and they can change lights so that we can change it to Ravens or the Orioles for the game. And I found I really had a passion for local government, which I will attribute a lot to Villanova's focus on service, and also like my feeling of her sustainability as like beyond just like doing renewable projects and that decarbonizing our society, but also the idea that I could also contribute in a way to reduce costs for the citizens of Baltimore and provide them with better service. I feel really strongly that the work we do makes better the libraries brighter and more friendly and more comfortable for people to come and experience city services. So I feel like that's an element of sustainability that may not even be often thought of. Any other prompts there? I'll stop share.
Great, thank you so much for sharing your story, Julia. Mike, you ready?
Yes, I am. Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be here and participate with on this great subject of sustainability, and happy to tell my story. And again, thanks for the invitation. Why don't I bring up my screen here? Let's make sure I can share that. There we go. Okay. Well, good. Yeah, Lisa, as you said, I graduated in 1985 from Villanova in civil engineering. I am officially a baby boomer, and my kids like to remind me of that. I did inherit this nice license plate that commemorates the 1985 championship. That was clearly the highlight of my my time at Villanova. It was a wonderful time and great experience. And that experience sort of carries with you. And Villanova is such a great university to develop that foundation to pursue your interests, whether it's engineering, science, and sustainability. But I'll tell you a little bit about what I do now, and I can step back and tell you a little bit about how I got to this point. So again, I'm the Director of Environmental Services for Monroe County. Monroe County is in upstate New York. We've got about 740,000 residents here. The city of Rochester is a county seat. And I work for County Executive Adam Bello, who just came into office. So we've had a number of sustainability initiatives that have been underway at the county for a number of years. I like to think Monroe County has really set the standard in New York State. A lot of people ask me, what do I do? Well, you know, and my short answer is I manage sewage and garbage. And it's really, those are two of my primary responsibilities. in environmental services. We've got a large wastewater utility, which we now call water resource recovery, but large wastewater utility. We've got a landfill, 3 recycling centers, fleet as well, like Julia, facilities maintenance, engineering, and renewable energy. And again, a lot of what Julia's responsibilities are similar here in county government for my department. But they overlap and they're integrated. And we've got this integrated environmental infrastructure that works very, very well to pursue sustainability. And so I've served 4 county executives now, and they all have had different levels of interest in sustainability. And County Executive Bello, part of his campaign was to develop a climate action plan because there was really an outcry in the community, primarily from students who were very interested in seeing the county move climate action forward. The prior county executives never really wanted to pursue climate action or carbon neutrality or really identifying what our carbon footprint was, but we had a number of outstanding sustainable achievements that have been undertaken, accomplished, and are still underway. Let me highlight some of those real quick. And again, they fall within environmental services here. Green buildings, got a number of certified buildings. I'll tell you a little bit about those. We've got fleet, where we've really dug into alternative fuel and alternative fueled vehicles. We've got a number of solar and alternative power projects I think are fairly outstanding. Lighting projects, LED primarily for highway and expressways, resource recovery, both water resource recovery as well as recyclable material, and then education outreach, a big part of our program here at the county. And again, we're taking all of these and we're going to roll them into a climate action plan that's just getting underway here in Monroe County. Let me tell you a little bit about our green building policy. It's one that began back in 2008, and it required buildings over 5,000 square feet to evaluate the opportunity to be LEED certified. And that's become very popular, obviously, since that time. It was over 12 years ago, but we've got a number of projects, 9 certified projects, and one that I think is our crowning achievement is a crime lab, a forensic laboratory here for Monroe County, and we were able to achieve a platinum certification for that. The balance of those are primarily for our community college, in which they've really embraced the LEED certification in pursuing sustainable design principles. We've got a number of other green infrastructure projects through our stormwater collaborative with our 19 towns and 10 villages in the city. Very proud of those as well too. Fleet, again, we have a very substantial fleet, and our drive to really pursue our alternative fuels a number of years ago was less out of environmental benefit, but more out of economic drivers. The cost of fuel at the time was over $4 a gallon. The county said, what can we do to reduce that financial burden, but also do something environmentally sustainable? At that time, we were really eager to pursue ethanol fuel blends. We partnered with Rochester Institute of Technology to study our fleet and the performance of alternative fuel blends. And we really embraced that as well too, and saw the benefit and great applications for our very diverse fleet of light, medium, and heavy duty vehicles. So since that time, we've achieved best green fleet through the Government Fleet Magazine twice, primarily because of our commitment to alternative fuels, alternative fuel vehicles, but also building the infrastructure for municipal use. We have 3 fueling stations that provide ethanol, CNG, propane, and at one time hydrogen. We had a partnership with GM, who had their hydrogen fuel cell research and development facility here in Rochester. So that's something that we've helped set the standard, we think, here in New York State and elsewhere in the country, and demonstrated that it can be done. And what's critical, I think, and the takeaway for us is that just not Monroe County alone, yet we have to set the standard, but we've got to make it easy for other municipal partners here in Monroe County, towns, villages, and the city to participate in that. So alternative energy, here in Monroe County, we developed a 13+ megawatt solar complex on 2 different locations here in Monroe County. It was at the time the largest in upstate New York. We sell it back out on the grid. We received the financial benefit from that, and that's great. from a financial standpoint, but there's more we can do with solar installations here in the county. As I mentioned earlier, we own and operate the 5th largest landfill in upstate New York, and we look to really harness its potential. We do that through extracting natural gas through a partnership with Waste Management and produce 6.4 megawatts of power that we sell, and again, derive a financial benefit to the county for that. So, you know, I've worked for county administrations that don't readily embrace sort of sustainability and climate action prior to our current county executive. So it often took a lot of translating, like Julia said, to between engineers and our governing body to really see the benefit of the environmental benefit, but also the social and economic benefit of many of these initiatives. We're big into recycling. We really set the standard in New York State back in the early 90s with our curbside recycling program. That's broadened to incorporate household hazardous waste. We don't collect that obviously at curbside, but we do that through centralized collections, pharmaceutical collections, right? And that was really driven out of a need to keep household hazardous waste and pharmaceuticals out of our sewer system, really to protect the collection system, the plants and the operators, but obviously also the environment as well too. Our pharmaceutical programs got a lot of attention. You know, that provides a public safety benefit in our community, right? You want to keep unused and unneeded or expired pharmaceuticals from being misused, but also out of the environment. What we did through a partnership with Waste Management is create a really unique facility called the Eco Park. My kids always think there's some kind of rides there or it's, you know, going to be like a good time. It doesn't provide that at all. It is a good time for adults generally, but it's a one-stop drop for hard to dispose of and hard to handle recyclables and recoverable materials. And our list continues to grow. We take the household hazardous waste, the pharmaceuticals, we take e-waste, we take scrap metal, we take textiles, clothing, batteries, the list goes on and on. We even take American flags that need to be ceremoniously handled and properly handled. So we find ways to make it easy for the residents in the community who want to do the right thing. And I'm sure most of you live in areas that the community wants to do the right thing. You just have to find a way to make it accessible and in some cases easy to do that. And the Eco Park, there's great information on our Monroe County website, which I'd be happy to share about the Eco Park and what it is. And again, we did it through a partnership with Waste Management. It's generally free to all of our residents, with the exception of you know, old televisions and waste tires and appliances that contain Freon. But you know, talk about sustainability. It's really a one-of-a-kind facility here in New York State, and others are adopting this model because there's really a demand for material that can't necessarily go into your curbside recycling program, and you want to keep it out of the landfill. One, to protect the environment, but this material is recoverable, it's recyclable, and reusable often. So it's received, you know, national and local attention, and it's one that we're very proud of. We do have a regular recycling facility for our curbside recycling program. We've got another facility that handles industrial, commercial, institutional recyclable material. And we process about 80,000 tons per year. Even with the downturn in the recycling markets internationally, we've been able to continue to have a sustainable program. And through our relationship with the city of Rochester, we process about 20 to 30,000 cubic yards of yard waste, as well as what we call zoo poo. Monroe County operates a great zoo, and we even have a program where we incorporate zoo poo from rhinoceroses and elephants and whatnot into very compostable material that the community seems to like. So water resource recovery, that's really my my wheelhouse. My background's primarily in you know, water infrastructure, but we treat about you know, 40 billion gallons of water per year that are recovered, reused, and sent back out to Lake Ontario. We've got our largest facility, which is the Frankie Van Laer Water Resource Recovery Facility, that we treat on average about 135 million gallons per day, but up to 600 million gallons per day during wet weather events, because the city of Rochester has a combined sewer system which incorporates both stormwater and sanitary sewage. We've also got another facility in the west side of our county as well too, a little bit smaller, but we try to try to be good neighbors with the residents that live around our facilities. We have annual open houses. We even provide lunch. People actually eat it at our treatment plants, and because we want to demystify what we do behind the fence and whatnot, and show them what we do and how important it is in our community. And we're very actively involved with the New York Water Environment Association. That's the member association from the National Water Environment Federation. And those of you in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, those states both have outstanding water environment associations as well too. Lighting, I'm sure many of you have noticed or are involved directly in conversions of lighting at municipal facilities and private facilities, maybe even in your own home, relying on LED technology. We have a minor league baseball field that we converted all the lighting, meeting Major League Baseball standards. We even, our county Department of Transportation, we own all of the expressway lighting on our interstates throughout Monroe County, and we're converting all of those to LED, which provides a higher quality light at a lower cost and a greater reliability as well too. So that's a very visible, no pun intended, project from the county's commitment to sustainability. But education outreach is really core to what we do. It's important that our taxpayers, our ratepayers know what we do. We put a lot of emphasis on getting the word out to the community, making sure they know how to recycle right, know where things go when they flush their toilet. There's a lot going on between the toilet and the treatment plant, and things that we have going on here in our community as it relates to a commitment to sustainability and how they can be involved. So again, we've worked hard to get recognition for that. And we've done that with some Telly Awards and through EPA, and there's a lot of good information on our website and some great videos we've made of the Eco Park, if you're interested in that, as well as our recycling center. And then some other areas that we're focused on here in the county as we advance our climate action plan. These are state programs, climate smart communities. We've got the Energize New York Open CPACE program for commercial facilities, clean energy through NYSERDA, as well as developing a complete streets policy. These are some ongoing sustainability initiatives that we have underway, but our next step is really developing a climate action plan, not just for Monroe County governmental operations, but also for our community as a whole. So that's it. In terms of what I do, I've got a $100 million annual operating budget. About 2/3 of that is responsible for our water resource recovery utility. I've got about 300 dedicated women and men in my department that, with all different backgrounds and diversity, dedicated to protecting the environment and public health of Monroe County. So it's a very, very rewarding job, and I've been with Monroe County since 1996. I've been Director of Environmental Services for the last 12 years, and I really enjoy this level of government. I like working in government, a lot like Julia, working in the city of Baltimore, a very, very exciting place, and you can see the tangible results of your work and the benefit to the community. And my community has been here in Monroe County for over 150 years. So after Villanova, I really wanted to use my degree to see the world and develop my resume, but also allow me to do the things that I wanted to do. And so, I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I liked civil engineering. I didn't know where it would take me. I had an interest in the environment and primarily water. But I remember sitting in my apartment in Bryn Mawr Courts and just sending out one resume after the other. And I wanted to live either in California or Boston. And so I got my first job working for the Department of Defense at Point Mugu Naval Air Station outside Camarillo, California, working in the Department of Public Works. And it was an exciting time. So I really wanted to use my degree to go on adventures and see the world but build and get good experience. But from there, I knew I really wanted to hone my engineering skills, and I went back to the East Coast and worked for Camp Dresser and McKee International out of Boston. And I was interested in the work they did because they really had, they're really best in class for water and wastewater engineering, but also had an international branch. So I worked there, working on projects in New England, but also overseas. And I had the opportunity to work in Dhaka, Bangladesh on a World Bank project for water treatment for their capital city. I was there about 6 months and spent time in Pakistan and lived and worked in Cairo, Egypt on the USAID project. But I knew I eventually wanted to get back home. And at the time, it was important for engineers to supplement their undergrad with a master's degree. And so my desire was really to start migrating back to Rochester, where all my family was and a lot of friends. And so I went to the University of Buffalo, as Lisa mentioned, got another master's of, or I should say a master's in civil engineering, and worked for Arcadis. There was Malcolm Perney back at the time, continued to do more water infrastructure projects. Transferred to the Rochester office. So I was back in Rochester, and we were doing a lot of work for Monroe County Environmental Services. And the more I learned about the county, the more I thought that would be of real interest to see the tangible application and operation of the engineering work that I had been doing. And so I liked the notion of that, being involved in the community and working in the operation itself. So that's what I did. It was convenient that my second cousin was the county executive at the time. So it does help on who you know. It's kind of a lesson learned along the way. And that gave me an entry into the county. But fortunately, I've been able to survive 4 administrations. I am politically appointed, and the politics of Monroe County have changed. So I'd like to think that I've earned my keep along the way. And my cousin, former county executive, he's long gone. And I'm happy to have been able to stay on and continue to do the good work here of Monroe County in the community. And that's what's really most rewarding. So that kind of summarizes the path that I've taken, and happy to chat some more with Julia.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the overview of all the great work that you have been able to accomplish with Monroe County, and your overview of your background. It's very helpful. So we have some great questions coming in here. Just kind of bounce around a little bit. Do you work with companies to help them become more environmentally sustainable or more environmentally conscious? I think probably this comes out of the notion or the news a lot of times that the companies are maybe polluting or doing the wrong thing. So is there collaboration between your public offices and these companies to maybe not only make them more sustainable, but they could also maybe do the opposite and help you guys out as well? I'm sure there's a little bit of both.
I'm not directly involved, but a lot of cities have building benchmarking standards and now increasingly performance standards, where they set forward a regulation that all buildings within the city have to meet certain energy efficiency thresholds, which is helping to push the existing building stock to achieve greater decarbonization. So that is one of the ways that cities, though Baltimore does not have one of these regulations, are able to push greater efficiency for companies. We have done some unique works with like little companies in my office, where we have a company that's doing like research and development we have a 3 megawatt combined heat and power plant that runs off of digester gas from our wastewater treatment plant and uses that to create electricity and steam. Well, this company is collecting the exhaust from those generators and trying to make algae and different products from it in order to mitigate the greenhouse gases, which is very cool. I mean, we'll see what happens out of it, but it's just this little opportunity where, you know, it doesn't hurt us any to have them there, and they're able to do some research and potentially be able to develop a business out of that, which is just a little fun thing we get to do. But otherwise, we don't, in my office in general services, we don't do a lot of engagement outside of city assets.
And that's consistent too here in Monroe County. I mean, we do regulate industries that discharge into our sewer network. industries you'd be familiar with, like Kodak, Wegmans, the Genesee Brewery, Ladestri, and a number of large industries. So we work with them on that end to see what they can do about lowering their the strength of their waste, to reduce the cost of surcharge to treat their high strength waste. But beyond that, we don't really go into businesses and influence really their decision-making process towards a commitment of sustainability. We have a lot of partnerships, but that's really for providing the county services that we provide. However, I would say as part of our climate action plan, that again, our first phase will be looking at county operations that we control, obviously directly, but the second phase of that will be looking at our community and what can we do as a community, both at the municipal level, but also at the industrial, commercial, institutional level too. And to what end will there be requirements, or will it be more of an encouragement or goals, good faith goals to try to achieve? They'll be to be determined, but I'm looking forward to that.
Great, thank you. So got a question here about civic pushback and how you've had to deal with that. I'm sure over the years you may have experienced a variety of different types of civic pushback for some programs. You know, any helpful examples or stories that can maybe put at mind or at ease some of what we might see in the news glorified?
Mike, I don't know if you have an example. I'm pretty new in leadership, so nobody's hassled me too much yet. I don't get pulled in front of the newspapers.
You know, there hasn't been a, say, a groundswell of you know, opposition, if you will, to initiatives and projects that we've had. When the landfill was first built, there certainly was, but now it's viewed as a community asset. In the town that it is, it's out in a rural portion of the county. There was a lot of mistrust in the community at the time, and now it's like I said, we have an annual open house at that landfill too, and it's like the county fair. I think we get over 1,000 people that show up at the landfill, and it's operated by Waste Management, but the county owns it. And but I'd say overall, we haven't had too much public outcry. Our pure waters rates are low. We're really behind the scenes in terms of what we do, and it's really when there's a problem that's obviously when we hear from residents the most.
Because I can actually give one example of my predecessor. When I first worked for the city, for a bit, the energy office had supported a waste to energy facility that's in the city of Baltimore called the Bresco Wheelabrator Incinerator. It got some national news when the city of Baltimore passed a City Clean Air Act that would have prohibited the emissions from this incinerator downtown. And that was due to a definite groundswell of community involvement in the community that lived near this incinerator and had some of the worst air pollution in the country historically in this community. And actually, my predecessors in the office actually changed their mind and turned around to saying, you know, and communicating up to leadership, like, no, like we don't need this waste energy plant. It's just so much pollution. It's not something worth doing. And then generally the city has been that way. At this point, I think the Wheelabrator won in court, and the Clean Air Act was that the city passed has been, I guess, remanded. There's legal actions. They couldn't actually pass that law. And then the city is continuing to debate how they enforce and continue with the relationship with this waste to energy plant. But it's definitely like a complete change of opinion in the city of where they felt about this plant that it previously had been like, oh guys, it's renewable energy. You can burn this waste whenever. But as people started to dig into the pollution impacts, and especially in a city that really faces disproportionate levels of asthma, et cetera. So that was community pushing constantly on the city to make change.
That's a really interesting example. We have a number of waste to energy facilities in our area as well. One that's, you know, historically been have higher pollution rates than one would like to see. And some students have gotten involved in that in the past. So relevant topic for a lot of our students as well. A question here about budgets. So obviously, you know, I think we're all like waiting for the shoe to drop in the next couple of months with budgets and the impacts of COVID, but this is definitely not the first time that there have been budget shortfalls and adjustments that need to be made. So how have your offices been impacted, or do you expect to be impacted? And you know, with your responsibilities and projects, does that change? You know, what happens there?
I can start with that. You know, our Pure Waters utility, we rely on enterprise funds and rates from our ratepayers, so there's been less impact with that. But the other portion of our budget is from the general fund, and you know, property tax and things like that. In the revenue that the county relies on is heavily dependent upon sales tax revenue. So obviously there's great concern with advancing a number of our projects and the borrowings that we have. So we have, even as of today, there's been a lockdown on many of our accounts that we normally would be expending for various small, medium, and large projects. And I think right now there's a holding pattern to see if the municipalities will receive, you know, will be able to use their CARES Act funding that came from the federal government in response to COVID to be able to offset the deficits that they're seeing. So, yep, they've kind of pumped the brakes a little bit on some of our expenditures, but fortunately our county executive remains committed to advancing our climate action plan to advance that. But we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, same with Baltimore City. We're under, you know, hiring freeze, which has made it difficult for us to build staff, you know, budget freeze in general, cuts all over the place, you know, people being let go in many cases. That has restricted our ability to do new projects. The one thing about energy work, at least, is that we can show the payback, and the city has still been open, at least open to. I haven't proved it by actually pushing a large performance contract through, but they're open to, if we can show the savings, that we can spread that over the long term and be able to initiate the projects. I think it's harder when we start thinking about those projects that may not have a financial payback, but have significant environmental benefits. That if they're not monetized, I worry about those kind of projects being funded. But we'll see.
Thank you so much. So there's a question here that's specifically about environmental professions, or engineering professions, but I think if we just generalize this for, you know, what made you choose to go into public service? I mean, Julia, it sounds like in your background, you've mostly worked for public entities in some shape or form for a long time. So, you know, what drove you to those professions? And, you know, maybe to add to that, you know, one thing that people don't necessarily think about working as a public servant, you know, like a positive that you kind of discovered in your career over time that you really enjoy.
You want to take that,
Julia?
To me first. So I actually had a conversation with my mother, right? So my mother called me, for some reason it was on her mind, and she's like, Julia, do you wish you had become an engineer? Thinking that I would have been further or paid more, I guess, if I had been an engineer, which is probably true. And I think in the job I've picked, engineering would have been a really helpful background. But in general, what I explained to her is that I don't actually do engineering. There's other staff that are engineers full-time, so I don't need it. Would it be handled, you know, as a woman in the room with an energy and facilities maintenance kind of work? Sometimes I kind of wish I had that engineering to kind of put down on the desk in front of the male engineers to say, all right. But I have been mistaken for an engineer. So that's, I guess maybe I can adapt to work in the area so much. But for me, like getting into public service, getting into local government, it was actually at a time where I was thinking of going into international work, and I was meeting with people for lunch interviews. This is a thing that I did not think I had to do when I was a at Villanova. You know, you just find somebody on LinkedIn that has the job you want, and then you just message them and say, hey, can we have coffee? And I met with them just to see, what is your job? How do I get where you are? And as I kept talking to them, I felt like I had no place in international work. I've lived internationally for like study abroad, but I'd never felt that I had a sense of place of where I would be to have authority there. And then I said, well, where do I have place? I was like, well, literally the place I live seems to make sense. So that's what took me to local government. And then in making the choice of where in local government I wanted to work, I had a conversation with the energy manager of Arlington County in Virginia. And he told me that I had to make a choice. And I don't think this is necessarily true, but I had to make a choice if I wanted to work with communities in stakeholder engagement, or did I want to work in operations and getting like projects done. And largely, I do find it somewhat true in local government that you can do both, but you have to decide which of those you prefer to do. And I wanted to work in operations. I wanted to work on the projects and not the stakeholder engagement. So that's what took me to local government. And government work in general was largely because I needed a job, and my uncle knew a guy in the consulting firm, and I wrote in this email that was very professional, and he forwarded it to his friend at the Army and just said, this is my niece, she's a very nice, smart kid. And that is how I got my job, is one colonel forwarded it to another colonel, forwarded it to another colonel who happened to be my future boss. So even if your uncles and aunts will embarrass you, just do not be shy. Just send those emails. You never know who they'll connect you to.
Oh, that's great. Right. See, it's a lot about who you know and your connections. Oh, nice Villanova mug. I'm going to get my old one. Yeah, this shows how this my old Villanova shows how old I am. In the bookstore. Anyway, yeah, that's a great path. I got into it because I knew I didn't want to be an electrical engineer like my dad. I found that out the hard way pretty quickly. But civil engineering was really the right fit for me. And again, as I said earlier, I kind of wanted to see the world and use the job to be able to support that. So that's something I kind of recommend anyone here that's listening. Use your job to be able to go do the other things you want to do in your life too. You can follow a parallel path, and you can really use that to your advantage. I was in consulting, and I think it's great to get that experience if you can, to get that level of professional experience. It helps you in government, but it's not certainly a prerequisite or mandatory. But I really enjoy government, as I mentioned earlier. You can see the tangible results of your efforts. You're making a difference in your community. You're not necessarily going to get rich in government either, but you can make a good living with great benefits. And you feel like you're making a difference. And a lot of us Villanova grads, we're kind of social by nature. And that's helpful too, because you're in a community, you have to interact with people, and you really have to develop your writing and speaking and presentation skills, and being able to maintain and develop and maintain relationships with people throughout the community. And that really contributes to your success. I do less and less technical work these days, and more just management and engaging people and trying to motivate people, and then convincing them, a lot like what Julie has to do with I'm sure the mayor's office and their city council on convincing them to advance projects and seeing the benefit of that. And so there's so much to working in government, and I think you feel a sense of accomplishment. Now, a lot of people, when I first got into government, they'd been here for 30 years. You see a lot of people that are 30 to 40-year veterans, and a lot of younger folks getting into their jobs. I know I bounced around for a few years until I really knew what I wanted to do, and that's okay. But it's nice to really lock into something and stay with it for a while and make a career out of it.
Awesome. So we're getting close to the hour, and I definitely don't want to go over the hour, but I think one last question that I'll probably ask of all of our panelists is, just like your budget shortfalls might be historic because of this pandemic, job hunting has become historically very, very challenging. As someone who graduated during the Great Recession, I know what it's like to graduate in a challenging economy, but I think that this one's going to take the cake on that. So for all of our students who are looking for jobs, or graduating this year, do you have any words of advice or suggestions? You both have mentioned some connections with your family, so that's clearly, obviously, something that people should look to. But if they don't have that opportunity through family connections, is there another tip or suggestion you would share?
I think the best hint I ever got when I was looking for jobs, because when I worked for the consultant for 7 years, I learned a lot, but I had gotten stuck. Like, I wasn't moving forward, and I had a mentor who came to me one day, and he just was like, hey, you want to apply to this? I have a friend. And I didn't want that job at all, but it was a wake-up call. And he became my mentor in talking about things. So I guess one is mentors are great to establish with people all throughout your life, and everyone loves to talk about themselves. So feel free to talk to people about how they got to where they are, because I love talking about myself. Everyone likes it. But the best advice I got from him is he was talking about when he was first applying to jobs, and he's many years my senior. He literally had to go and drop the letter off in the office. He had to go in the door, and he told me, Julia, even though you can apply online, you still have to just get in the door. You have to contact that person on LinkedIn. You got to have the coffee. You have to find the local group. You might get lucky, but if you don't have connections in a space, you have to get in different. I am an introvert. You may not sound it when I'm being very effusive on the webinar, but I am very introverted. So I hate those networking events. But it was very critical when I was getting to the space to meet, women in energy, and there was a DC Young in Energy and Environment group, and DC Young Persons in Sustainability that I'd go to, and it would be terrible. But you met people, that person connected you to another person, and that person connected you to another person, and it was, it's how I originally got into the city of Baltimore. It was through somebody from a networking group that forwarded me a job that was on her listserv. And that's how I even found it. That's how things really do happen, which is exhausting and unfair.
That's great. Well, let's see, what could I add to that? That's great advice. Getting involved with the professional association is important. I certainly didn't do that when I was an undergrad. I had no interest whatsoever. It wasn't until later in my career that I got involved with the Water Environment Association here in New York State, and recently served as president. And it was a really, really rewarding experience. But it's never too late to get involved. And if you have a particular group that, whether it's water or whether it's solar or whatever professional association that might be out there, get involved with their network, like Julia said. That's a great thing. Some of you are contemplating master's degrees. I waited 6 years to go back to school, and that was a tough gear shift to go back to school after 6 years. It had some advantages, but I'd almost recommend getting it out of the way and using that to your advantage. And I think the economy will rebound. There's a lot of commitment to infrastructure, so I think that things will bounce back, and that there'll be a lot of work on incentives for a lot of environmental projects.
I think the one thing I'll add is a really good advice I also got from someone, which was, I was so worried when I was at Villanova and I was getting my first couple jobs that what if I lock into one thing and then I'm stuck and I can never change my mind and I can never change at all. And I met this wonderful woman who had, 40 years old, decided with her liberal arts degree, she wanted a PhD in biology. So she got her PhD in biology, and now she's 6 years ago, she was running an ocean acidification program at NOAA. And she just decided, forget it, I'm going to try something new. And she went after it with her whole heart at, what some people would say, you can't go back and get a PhD. You'll take forever to finish. But, it's not too late. Maybe you don't accelerate like you think you have to, but it's possible and rewarding.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Thank you so much for your time. This was really interesting and informative. And I just really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with all of us. So virtual, clapping handshake Bees, yes,
Yep.
up the bees. Yay, there we go. We see some claps. Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.